Thank you for joining the Doctor Whisperer. I am your host, Sharon Fekete, and I am happy to bring you a show where we talk about the business of medicine. I hope that you enjoy it. Please feel free to share, subscribe, and pass it on. Enjoy the show. Hello, hello, hello. Well, if you are watching or listening to this, you have arrived into 2023. Congratulations. Welcome. And with me today, back 1 year later, which is hard to believe, we thought it was 10 minutes ago, is Dr. Jonathan Baktari, which I'm saying wrong, Baktari.
You got it.
I got it the second time. Baktari. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thanks so much for having me back. What an honor.
No, what a whirlwind we've been through in 1 year. It was 2021 and we were thinking, well, things are getting a little better in the pandemic, and now 2022, and you and I have both been traveling and life is getting a little bit better and more open. So how has life been for you?
Excellent. We've been trying to catch up now that things are open. So we've been doing a lot of traveling. We're going to conferences, doing a lot of other stuff that we weren't able to do as much before. So it's been really exciting time catching up and, doing the things that we couldn't really do the way we wanted to in the last year or two. Yeah.
Well, great. So, I have, if you want to listen to our show on all the things that this wonderful doctor does, you could just go back to December 2021 and listen to that, because we're going to talk about something different today, which is your podcast and your second season, which is Crash CEO School.
Yep. Crash CEO School. Right.
Okay. So why don't you tell the audience why you've decided to do this, first of all, to do the podcast. And then I want to hear about why you chose to go into a season of the Crash CEO School.
Well, to start the podcast, I think it was just an evolution. I was being interviewed in a lot of different places, the Washington Post, USA Today, Forbes, Barron's, and people were asking for my input. And then, after doing lots, even local TV interviews and what have you, it just came to me that, we have all this content that I sort of give drips and drabs to, different reporters here and there. But, so, well, wouldn't it be fun just to take a whole topic? One of the frustrating things of getting interviewed, especially on local media, is they want a soundbite. They want 30 to 60 seconds. Right. And I'm like, no, there's more.
Right. Doctor, explain the COVID vaccine to me in 5 seconds.
Right. And I've actually, sometimes they would interview for half an hour and I'd be like, I'm like, honey, watch this. I'm going to be on the news. Look, I'm going to explain this whole thing. And literally they would take like 10, 20 seconds. And I'm like, really? So anyway, so I'm like, okay, so where is a venue where I can blab, with no limits?
Yes, here we are. We're blab casting right now.
Yeah, right. I want to blab, 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 blab. And so this concept of the podcast came up. So, and I think that, when you want to set up a podcast, you start to look for advice, and people are like, well, you got to niche down. You got to niche. You got to just talk about one little thing and keep, talking about that one little, you can't be too broad. And actually that's not me. I want to talk about every aspect of healthcare and business as it relates to healthcare and some, medical stuff and business stuff and everything in between. So I didn't listen, and I just did like a general podcast of everything I wanted to talk about. And as everyone tells you, you evolve, your podcast evolves. You sort of start thinking one way, but as the season and time rolls by. So we finished the first year. It was really good. I had a lot of fun. That was the most important thing. And then after that, what we did was, so we started thinking about season 2. And my thing about season 2 was I wanted to have something slightly different. And so I looked at most of the emails and questions I would get after doing podcasts, especially guest podcasts, because I didn't control the narrative. People would ask me, if you look at some of my guest podcasts, I've been on 30, 40 podcasts, maybe more, is for some reason, the host or hostess always focuses or tries to focus on the business end of what we do. And it became clear, at a certain point that that's what a lot of people want to know. Like, how do you start a company? How do you build culture? I had one, how do you fire people? How do you promote people? How do you talk to vendors? How do you, how
do you start a podcast?
How do you start a podcast? Yes. Like today,
right.
or the other things like how do you fight above your weight class? Like how do you pretend like you're bigger than you are? Seriously, these are things you do. I mean, when you're starting out, you don't want to be yelling, "We're just starting out." I mean, you want to say like, "Oh, we've been doing this in our sleep."
Sure.
Right. So you can't just come off as someone.
Although I can't stand. Let me interrupt and say, when you know that somebody is a solo entrepreneur. It's just them, and they keep saying we.
Yeah.
I think at some point, right? And if you're being a CEO, like you're a CEO of a company, two companies, which means actually you have a lot of employees. You're running a big business. To say that you're a CEO of, say, just for shits and giggles, like a social media company, and it's just you posting content, right?
Right.
Silly.
And I see that distinction. I hear what you're saying, because then you realize that they're not really a company. But I'm talking about, like, let's say you already have 5-10 employees, you've invested money, you've created a website. I think if you want to get some big clients and I don't know, screaming out that we're so small helps. But even to look big, you're going to have to invest resources. So you are big in that sense. If you're willing to, hire people like you, for example, or if you're willing to invest a lot in a website, if you're willing to, get Google ads, and at that point you're big anyway. So you're on the road to bigness. Let's call it that. You're on the road. I
like it.
You're on the road to bigness. You just haven't gotten there yet. But yeah, I think. Here's the one thing I know. When we talk to bigger companies, and this is something I really teach my staff. Now we're going to the Crash CEO School stuff here. I teach my staff, when you're talking to a bigger company, much bigger company, those people are used to talking with people on their caliber. Like, for example, we got a phone call from Tesla, believe it or not, wanting some of our services. So nice. I'm like, when you're talking to Tesla, you better pretend like you're on the stock market, because they don't want even a small local company necessarily. They're used to talking to heavyweights, and they can smell and fish out just from how you talk.
Yes, absolutely. So how do you teach them that? How do you teach your employees that?
Well, believe it or not, I have a whole course that I give my employees. That's I wrote a whole course on how to answer the phone. It's actually,
I remember this now. Yes, I'm sorry. It's all coming back to me.
Yeah, in fact, it's going to be on Kajabi. We're actually going to sell it to the public in about a month or two. We're doing the final edits, but it was an internal course I did for my staff and the company that helped me with the course. So, well, why don't we just put it out there for other people? So, so it's teaching them how to, like, for example, just if you want to get granular, is, when you're talking with them, look them up on LinkedIn during the conversation and just say, oh yeah, or look at their website. Oh, by the way, yeah, I see you're located in 5 different states. Oh, wow, that's amazing. Or I say, I hope you don't mind, often I check out people that I'm talking to just so I know, how to better serve them. I see on your LinkedIn profile that you also used to be vice president of that company. Wow, so you got a really diverse background. That the average ma pa does not do that. And you start doing that, like, oh, I'm really talking to a professional. So if Tesla's calling you wanting to have a, whatever, then you gotta
step it up, people.
You gotta step it up. So that's what I'm saying. It's not pretend like you're just, like working in your basement and, but you're really in your pajamas and you're really a company. But if you are growing, you have. How about this? Let's phrase it like this. You have to know how to talk to people above your weight class.
Yeah, so true. So true.
If you don't know how to talk to them, you're never going to get them as a client.
Ever. It's so true. I could not agree with you more. You could relate the same thing to when people come to interview for your company or for any company and they haven't researched the company that they're interviewing for. This is the first thing that strikes me, and it's with technology at our fingertips on our phone, where we could look somebody up. Before I started this podcast, I texted Alyssa and I said, "Hey, how long was it?" It was December of last year. Well, you know what? I'm going to listen to it a little bit before, because I don't want to sound like a moron, right?
Right.
And I think I like to say things like morons because I like to be unprofessional when I can be on my own show, but I wouldn't say that on your show, God forbid. But I do think that it's important that we level up when we're having these types of conversations, because I don't assume it's every day Tesla's calling you. Maybe every third day.
But that's the point. I mean, this is the exact, you may get calls, but if let's say in a 3-month span, only, smaller companies are calling you. So you get in this routine of talking to them a certain way, right? So it doesn't have to happen every day. But when you do get it, if you start talking to them the way you talk to a company that has 5 employees and wants your services, and you go through the same spiel with them, right? Yes. I mean, when somebody, a big company calls you up and says, "We want to send you an RFP," and you say, "What's an RFP?" That's probably not going to work in your benefit.
It would make me laugh, though. But I do. That's funny. When I first got into medicine, and I'm really gonna humiliate myself here, which I love to do. I did not know what OSHA stood for. I didn't even know what it was. Because I'd come from telecom. Now we're going way back in my 20s. I turned 50 in October. I've learned a few things along the way, but I actually said it out loud. Like, I don't know what that stands for.
Wow.
And I knew, not a great thing to do when I was interviewing. So yes, I get your point. And I love that you have these courses for your employees, and no wonder why, when you're being interviewed, you've decided now to do this Crash CEO school, because there are so many, especially in medicine, hence the doctor whisperer. I just help physicians navigate through their business, right? And like we were talking about off air before, I don't expect everybody to know about SEO or podcasting, but you have to know enough to be dangerous if you are going to be that point person that is doing the hiring of these companies. You have to have an understanding, right? So what types of other topics are you going to bring to this Crash CEO school?
Well, I already taped the first one. So the first one was like 10 secrets to make your startup business blow up.
Ooh, like it. Catchy.
So the first, I'll just go through the list briefly, but the first one was plan to be on all the time. So I think a lot of people, want to start something, but they're used to having a job and, working 9 to 5. So they go, well, this thing that I'm starting, I'll kind of work through it during the day, and nights and weekends, I'll be bowling, skiing, and you can still do all of that. But the whole concept that you're on all the time, that you're checking your emails all the time, it doesn't mean you have to work all the time. It just means you have to be on all the time.
Yes.
If there's a big thing, you go to a funeral, wedding, whatever, and you need to turn your cell phone off, and of course. But, if you wake up in the morning and, check your email 2 hours later after you wake up, after you're all set, it's probably going to come back to bite you a little bit at some point. So plan on being on all the time if this is what you want. Now, I got to be honest with you, this is not for everybody.
No, it's not.
Some people just want a job, or they want to just clock in, clock out, even if it's their own business. And that's okay. I'm just saying, if you really want to go to the next level, you can't do it without being on all the time. So
okay,
I think,
don't go to the next topic yet, because this one is too good. I'm afraid that this is going to happen with every one of your topics, but goodness, if that is not one of the most important things for people to understand before they open a business. I've had so many doctors say to me, well, I want to pick my kids up from school every day. Well, that's fantastic. And you should, but you're going to have to hire people, and you're going to work harder, most likely, than you ever have before when you were working in the hospital or in the large practice.
Right.
Because if you are not on, like you mentioned, they're going to go somewhere else,
And also your staff, it's your staff, people you're trying to work with, people you need a contract with, you're trying to get a contract with Blue Cross, or you're trying to do this. You have to be on all the time. Just,
yes.
But here's the one thing that, I tell people who want to start a business is, for the first year or two, you may have to work 80 hours a week or 100 hours a week. The goal, of course, is so you can spend the next 30 years not doing that.
Yes.
But the first year or two, if you could work 100 hours a week, which again is not for everybody,
right.
I don't recommend this for everybody. But if you're that person that I'm talking to, yes, 80, 100 hours a week for the first year or two.
Yes.
Then after that, you have to be on all the time, but you could, as you become more successful and advanced, you can cut it back to, to 30, 40 hours a week, or maybe even less long term. But initially, you need that initial investment. And then, like you said about picking up the kids, is this a good time to do it? Like if you're in the middle of a tumultuous personal life at that point,
right?
You have to think about that. Is you may have this great idea, blah blah blah, but right now, you're taking care of some sick relatives. You got this going on, you got that going on, and so that's just why sabotage yourself? Don't do it right now. Mm-hmm. Wait until you're clicking on all cylinders.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Great advice.
And this is a really cool thing that I always tell people. Again, we're talking about just when you're starting the business. If there is a way to do it, try to get a job in that industry that you're looking to do. You want to be a concierge doctor, go get a job in a concierge office for 6 months and see, why jump into it full force. If there's a way to learn the industry on someone else's dime.
Right. Yes.
Right. And this came to me a long time ago. I had a neighbor of mine who knocked on my door one day, and he said, he was always coming to me with investment ideas, right? So he goes, I have this great idea. Why don't we go into the limo business? And I'm like, limo business? Because yes, I've researched it. You rent out 10 limos for $1,000 a month, but then you cash flow, $2,000 per car. And so I said, listen, I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. You go get a job in the limo industry for 6 months and come back and tell me if this is a good idea. And to my surprise, he did.
He did? No way.
He became a limo driver.
Wow.
And then he came up to me a few months later. It is the worst field in the world. It's hard to get a license or a medallion. The city controls everything. And there's all these kickbacks you got to do. I'm like, okay. So that, if you're thinking about getting into a field, even of medicine, just go get a job in it.
Yeah.
You think being a concierge medicine is great, and it may be perfect for you, but why? And also, why learn the business on your dime? Well, why learn all the mistakes and who the correct vendors are and where to get the supplies for the cheapest price? And so anyway, so those are things about just initially starting out that were things that we thought of.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's why it's a great idea when you have an opportunity, even you're in med school, for any of our med school students that might be listening, to try out different specialties, because you might think you want to go into orthopedics and then realize, you hate surgery or whatever it is, and I always loved that when I was running a practice, to have them come in and spend real time to see what it's like, because you really don't know until you are in the operation, and see what the behind the scenes is like. So that is really good advice. And if you can get paid to learn it, yes, because really the hardest thing about being a business owner, and the thing that most people don't realize, is that you're really not going to know until you're actually doing it.
Yeah, for example, I had a dear friend of mine that I started medical school with, and he was like, I'm going to be a pediatrician. I'm going to be a pediatrician. I love kids. I love children. I want to help children, 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 children. And I remember, like our senior year when we were applying, and I'm like, so pediatrics, right? He goes, oh, no pediatrics. I'm like, but you love children. Children are everything to you. Because but not the crazy parents. I didn't sign up for that. I didn't know about because I didn't know about the crazy parents. I just knew. So
I just thought I loved kids. I didn't know that those humans were going to bring them in,
right,
and speak for them,
right. So again, it's in a vacuum. It all sounds good until you get there.
Yes, and learning the business of it, right? I mean, I wouldn't have. I came from adult medicine in New York, and I ran pediatrics when I moved to Tampa Bay. I had no idea how broke those pediatricians were.
Oh yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm not kidding.
No.
You really do. You have to have a volume, and you have to have a presence, and it's a lot of work. So yes, do your due diligence and do it on somebody else's time if you can. I like that.
Right.
Are you still running your medical practice like it's 1990? Well, what about Riva Global Medical Virtual Assistants? A medical virtual assistant, I promise you, is the way to run your medical practice today. Why? Because you can save, thousands of dollars. No more paying for health insurance, no more worrying about office space. You also have trained professionals. These wonderful human beings get trained, and they have a client service manager that makes sure that your VA that you're working with for your practice is hitting all the goals that you need to make sure that your practice is run efficiently and friendly. Check out Riva Global Medical Virtual Assistants today. Are you tired of the one-on-one grind? You want to break free from the brick and mortar practice and work from anywhere? Ready to impact more lives, work less, all while making more money? Sound too good to be true? It's not. You can actually learn how to do all of this and more at the first annual In This Together live event that's happening in Orlando, Florida on February 20th to the 22nd, 2023. Join your host, Dr. Kylie Burton, and other world-class speakers for an event unlike any other you've attended. And it's for practitioners only. These tickets will sell out, so grab yours quickly. We will provide the link to this event in the show notes. Click.
So,
what else you got?
All right. So what else I got here? Yeah, I'm going to just repeat my podcast for you, but that's okay. Okay. Number 2, if you want to go into this.
He's going to go more in depth on his podcast, I promise.
Yeah, much more. Number 2 is a mindset, which is failure is not an option. Okay. If you go and say, well, I'm going to try it and see if it works, you can pretty much bet it's going to fail.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. This is the hardest thing to teach, but failure is not an option is something that it's a mindset that I don't care how many walls I'm going to have to go through. I don't care how many obstacles, because if you have a plan B and C, if this doesn't work, then you're going to be going to plan B and C. For sure.
100%. Yes.
So
listen, you're speaking my language here. This is good for me. Who cares about the audience? I'm just kidding.
Okay. Well, the other thing kind of like at the beginning
is... you know what? Let me stop you for a second. I'm sorry. So just to continue on the mindset, I always ask my doctors, what are they doing for their personal development? And they're like, well, Sharon, I'm not here for you to help me with my personal development. And I'm like, well, if you want to run a business, your mindset and your personal development is very, very important, because you will be tested in a way that you probably have never been tested before. You think it's bad that you have to see 100 patients a day because the administrator's on your back. What about when there's no income? Right? So how are you going to set yourself up for success so that failure is not an option? So you're on the money there with mindset. I think it's super important. I don't know how you start your day, but I start my day with exercise and meditation
Mhm.
because of what I do for a living. I have to
Mhm.
be in the right mindset because I know my day, somebody didn't show up for an interview before. So now I have to scramble to fill that slot.
Mhm.
I have a physician, new client later on. You have to be prepared for everything. So just to take a pause on how great that topic is and how important that is,
Mhm.
no matter how hokey somebody might see that, it's very, very, very serious.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Good.
I mean, your personal development and where your psyche is going to impact everything. Your positivity, your ability to handle stress, it's all part of it.
And the team is watching you.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And they're actually hanging on to every word you say.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Right. Especially if you're a physician. I tell this to my PAs and nurse practitioners because they don't initially, when they're coming out of training, they don't realize the power of a clinician.
Mm.
And your staff, literally how you say it, how you serve it up. You could say the same thing 3 different ways, but it'll mean different things the way you say it, because they're like, oh, this is like a clinician. So, you're almost like on a different level and they expect you to handle yourself. So, like if you're willing to cut corners or let things slide, they're like, they're not really expecting that from a high level person to, okay. All right. Well, this, that, but you got to have high ethics, convey high ethics, high standards. You got to be driven by quality, not by other things necessarily. And the staff picks up on that. If you're not, if those aren't your focus, quality and, listening to patients, taking care of patients, if they feel like you're just plowing through the patients, for example, they're going to pick up on it. So yeah, it's how you conduct yourself, especially if you're a clinician, is amazingly important.
And it doesn't hurt to be nice.
Of course.
Yeah, well,
of course.
Some of them really need to hear that, Doc.
Yeah.
I had a physician that never used to say good morning. Never. Walk into the office, barking orders. And I pulled her aside one day and I said, I do realize that this good morning thing is difficult for you, but I promise you it will go a long way with the staff if you take that nanosecond to just say good morning. You don't have to talk to them for the rest of the day if you're so busy, but really that initial contact with your team is going to dictate your day.
Right.
So what about culture? Sorry, I'm jumping in here because I know that you're big on culture and you've done a lot for your employees. You have a great team. I remember how, serious you are about onboarding and these training courses and how to answer the phone. I'm huge on hospitality and healthcare. Ultimately, everything that we do affects the patient. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how you're going to do this Crash CEO school and encourage a culture that can enhance your business and people's lives?
Right. Well, I think part of building a culture is, making sure you have the right team, because, not everybody in your organization that you hire is a good fit because, their priorities may be different. They may just want a job. We tend to hire people who want a career, want to grow professionally and financially. So it's sort of like if you've ever done a pickup basketball game where you get to pick the people and you go, that guy's tall, let's pick him, or whatever. It's the same thing. You're picking your team.
Yeah.
And I think, hiring people who have a vision, that get enrolled into your vision, your company's vision, and want to be there. They ideally want to be there when they retire. I mean, we joke about it, but yeah, that's really what you're looking for. Now, once you put that great team together, what happens is that anybody else that joins is going to feel like they're out of step with everyone else because everyone else is all bought in. And they're like, oh, I thought this was a job. No, everyone else is bought in. So the pressure actually comes from the people next to them
Mm.
As I joke, like if I got a job at the post office tomorrow, right? And I went in there, and after 1 week, I said, "Hey guys, listen, I've come up with this great idea how to make this postal thing more efficient." And they'd be like, "Listen, just sit down over there. We're all here trying to get our 20 years in, not to what to say postal, but they're civil surgeon. Yes,
Sure.
they want to do a good job, but they don't want to revolutionize the postal service."
Right. They just want to stay in business at this point.
Right. And so, but if you go get a job at a startup where or a business that everyone is dialed in, and you just want to clock in and out, the pressure is going to be on you versus, so again, if you're a go-getter and you go into an organization where everybody just wants, you're going to stand out. The flip side is when the majority of people are dialed in and somebody comes in who wants to clock in and out, they're going to stand out. So the question really is, who is going to be the outlier when they join your organization? If the person who is not dialed in is going to be the outlier, yeah, they're either going to change or leave.
Yes, for sure.
But if you have a bunch of people who are not dialed in and you bring in a dialed in person, that's not going to work either, because they're not going to appreciate that this person wants to stay an extra hour and making them look bad, or take on a new. I remember like one time, this young girl that I hired, after a couple of weeks, knocked on my door. I said, "Come on in, Susie, whatever." And she walked in and goes, "Dr. Baktari, I hope you don't mind, but I was reviewing our website and I found about 30, 40 grammatical errors and spelling errors. And here it is. I thought maybe we could help." I'm like, "Who are you?" I mean, like, actually, she was like a medical assistant. I'm like, "Oh, where did that come from?" And you're like, "Oh my gosh." So I mean, and like, who does that?
Right.
What kind of person does that? And so these are the things you're really looking for. And of course, but then the other mistake is you got to treat them well. I mean, you got to treat everyone well, but you got to compensate people like that, right? You have to take care of them.
Yes,
okay?
you do.
Right. And
yes,
you have to value them, and you have to promote them, financially, professionally, pretty much. If you have if someone who's all dialed in and they're with you for more than a few years, they better have to take a pay cut to go anywhere else. If that should be your yardstick. If they wouldn't have to take a pay cut to go anywhere else, you're probably not paying them enough.
Right. Well, it's so true, and it's so important. I'm always surprised at how little time people take to hire the right people, because it really, at the end of the day, it does not matter how great your business model is. If you don't have the right people to make the dream happen, you're going to end up lighting a whole bunch of money on fire, just going through that cycle of poor performers. And I gave up recruiting officially in 2021 forever. I will never recruit again, only for my own company, because I don't even think executive recruiters are paid enough, because in order for people to get the right place, it's more than just the position. It's the psychology of the business, of who they're working with, what the vision is. And I certainly know that your CEO school will help a lot of physicians, especially, know that might not be their expertise. Hiring isn't for everybody. I've had too many people say, I have a good read on people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have talked about this. I actually, my second episode of the season was hiring, and I interviewed an HR director who'd been doing this for 20, 30 years. So we spent like 2 hours talking about how to hire. I mean, that's a whole skill set, because I mean, just the basic premise is that most interviews are an artificial dance, where the person being interviewed tries to figure out what you want to hear, right, and then you representing your company obviously are going to put the best light on the company. Then you're not going to say, "Oh, our sales are down," and blah
Right.
blah blah. So very little information gets transmitted in that interview. It's an artificial setting. It's like your first date. Nobody's going to
Exactly
say,
what I referred to.
yeah.
Always dating.
Yeah, nobody's going to say I snore on the first date, right? Like no one.
Right.
No
I
one's
bite
gonna
my
say,
nails and I smoke.
yeah,
Hire me.
and I don't like dogs that are kids. So anyway,
Right.
so the question really is then how do you get past? And then we talked about this. How do you get past that? And there are ways to get past it, so you're not just exchanging information that's essentially meaningless for the most part. So anyway, but you can watch my podcast it's like a 2-hour thing. We talk about that, but yeah, so those
that's really important. I mean, if you still think checking somebody's references is really that important, I mean, you're really just going to find out what somebody was paid and if they're being honest on their CV or their resume. But really, like, a reference is typically somebody that they really like. I've talked to more best friends, and I think parents of employees than I care to admit through the year. Right.
Yeah, but even that, we don't accept friends and family as references. So our criteria has got to be 3 bosses who could hire or fire you. And then it was really interesting. Now we outsource it to like a company that sends it out by email and scores it. It's really pretty eclectic. But when we were calling, the one key question to ask someone when you're calling for a reference, which really gets the flow. What?
Would you rehire them?
No, that's not even the question. No, that's
not.
What?
What do you mean?
But yes. But the real question is, you sit there and okay, so tell me about Bill, tell me about Susie, blah, 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 blah. And they tell you. And then at the end, I said, well, really, thank you so much for all that information. But I do have one last question for you. Sounds like Susie or Bill is, really a great person. But you know what? Everybody has a weak point. Okay, everybody. No one's perfect. And without giving me something that's really a good point, Mass has a bad point, but really, do they have any weak points that you could share with me? I mean, no one is perfect. True. And that question, I'm giving you a little pearl here, opens up the floodgates.
But Doc, are you allowed to ask that question?
I don't know. Back when I was doing it, I did. No, when you say weak point, we're not asking like personal questions. They have trouble, whatever. They have trouble putting reports together. They have trouble, whatever. But you do find out if you ask for their weak points. But and the weak point doesn't have to be bad. It just puts the thing in perspective. You can still most of the time hire the person, but it really gives you an idea but yeah, a lot of times we got very startling answers. And then the other thing we do is we put for the applicant, we have a list of deal killer questions that we have them fill out. And if they miss on the deal killer questions, like for example, how far away do you live? Well, somebody lives 40 miles away in another city and you want them to be with you for the next 30 years. Yeah, anyone can commute for a year or two. Very few people can commute an hour, twice a day for 40 years or 30 years. So, and if that's the kind of person you're looking for, if they live 40, 2 hours away, an hour away, whatever, even a half hour away, 45 minutes away, you have to factor that in if this is a position that you're going to train them for life.
Right. Well, I also think, because hiring is such a hot topic for me, but I think that in today's culture and now 2023, everybody has to be a little more reasonable and flexible with how we employ people in terms of hybrid models and a 4-day work week. There has to be something because this world completely changed. And I don't think that unless you're a stickler or it is, seeing patients, we're talking about a nurse, a PA, an NP, and they have to physically be in the office and there's no telehealth happening. I think that that's a hard thing to switch the mindset of when somebody's been in business for a long time. I mean, look at what happened with Elon, right? And Twitter. I mean, talk about a shit show. And I'm happy Tesla called you. That's fantastic, and that you're not taking over Twitter after him. But it is a world that I hope is entirely different in terms of how we treat our employees. We should have always treated them well.
Right.
But unless, somebody has some type of stake into your company, nobody's ever going to work as hard as the business owner, nor should anybody expect it. So when, a front office staff is hired at, $13 an hour with no benefits, I wouldn't expect too much from them.
Right. No, that's not going to work. So,
Right.
like one of the things we do is we give full benefits, PTO, blah, even for everybody.
Your company, of course,
Yeah,
I would expect that from you, but most companies don't do it.
But even beyond that, I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds of it, but I can't tell you how many times, we've had staff who are going through personal things that impact them, and whatever. But I mean, I know my senior leadership have stepped in and helped in ways that don't normally fall into benefits, if I can be vague about it, and offer to help people in different ways depending on what they're going through. So I think this ability, it's not just about the pay and benefits. If someone's going through something,
be a good human.
You have a moral obligation to take care of them, and if there are things you can do financially or other ways, you have to step up, because this is your teammate for life, ideally, and you have to treat them with respect and dignity. And people, life is life, and people go through different things. And we have a litany of employee health benefits that aren't listed in our employee benefits section, because we just pull them out when we need them, on top of all the benefits we give. So I think that mindset, that there is no such thing as that's not a benefit. Anything could be a benefit. If the person needs it and they're in that situation, you have to look at that.
Yeah, well, and alluding to mental health benefits, I think that, everybody should be talking about them and encouraging that, and having some type of employee assistance program or just a safe space to encourage mental health in the workplace today. I think that's
I love it.
A really big piece for me. It's something that I'm very passionate about. So I'm glad that you brought that up. So anything else that's coming up with the Crash CEO School that we want to mention, or should we just dangle the carrot and make them come to the episodes themselves?
No, I'm open to, by the way, to most of the ideas I got were from people, asking.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any things they want me to cover in Crash CEO School, we have a list, but if anyone has anything, you can reach out to me at Baktari MD, LinkedIn, whatever, but just let me know if there's anything you'd like me to cover.
I love it. Well, I don't want to wait until December of 2023 to have you back. So hopefully we can have another conversation midway through the year, because I think that you're a phenomenal resource, especially for the physicians that are breaking out of corporate and wanting to start their own journeys. I think that this Crash CEO School is very helpful, and to learn about it from a triple board certified physician, holds some weight as well. So
no, thank you. No, it's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. It's you're doing the right thing when it's nothing but fun. Doesn't seem like work.
Yeah. That's how it's supposed to be, everybody. If you're not enjoying yourself, then you really need to get out of that business.
Right. For sure.
Thanks, Doc. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you. So if you want to party like it's 1999, but run your medical practice like it's 2022, don't forget to check out Riva Global Medical Virtual Assistants. Don't forget to grab your tickets to the first annual In This Together live event in Orlando, Florida, happening on February 20th to the 22nd, 2023, with your host, Dr. Kylie Burton. Grab your tickets now. Link in show notes.